everyone. I hope everyone has had a wonderful week. I know that last week I had to take off because I've been taking extra shifts for work. I've just recently negotiated a new deal with my real estate. They are wanting to charge me a whole bunch more money, so I'm taking up more efforts. Okay, so today, where are we at? So today's show will involve, there is a SCOMO SmackDown. Dean Andrews corrects the record, ALBO on housing. Lydia's words to Pauline Hanson, revelations that are brand new on Bruce Lehman. The Herald Sun tries to make a king, and Friendly Jordies talks housing. So first up, we're going to discuss how Scott Morrison is set to resign. He's still obviously taking from the public purse of being in the seat of Cook. Now, I don't know if he has additional revenue from being the former Prime Minister or not. I would assume so. So he's taking them, but he's also trying to take up an overseas post. Something to do with an American security something. I've explained it once before, but to me, it basically comprises of a think tank of sorts. And really, these never really pay that much. But because this particular think tank is based around the US, that's where it comes from. Okay, so let's get started. Anika Wells went to a National Press Gallery. And in that, she spoke about how Scott Morrison had an issue with sports and politics not combining. Here's the problem with that particular detail. If you're so upset that sports and politics do not combine, why on earth would you build stadiums for certain teams? Why would you call a plane Shark 1? It creates a conflict of interest when you've already created that conflict of interest. So let's have a look at her answer on the national press stage.
Some people argue that sport and politics don't mix.
Yes.
But sport and politics do mix. Do you think there's a moral dimension there where politics and sport must mix?
Sport is almost more political than politics. I think that the only people who argue that sport and politics should not mix are the people that currently hold the political power in sport and seek to retain that political power. I saw that former Prime Minister Morrison teed off about this in the Parliament last week, about sports supporting the voice. This from a man who created a group chat called Legends and, dragooned Australian athletes into this group chat, to then say that the sport and politics should never mix. Please.
Okay. Thank you for a direct answer on that one. I appreciated that. Some people argue that sport and politics
there's going to be more that arises with this. Sport and politics absolutely mix. Hence the Indigenous team having a big political support within the NRL, and a whole bunch of other ways. The netballers as well, they've also played a role with sport and politics. That's the thing. There's always been the two coincide. You can't have a playing Shark 1 and then go, well, I'm not involved in sport and politics, and then go to cricket games debating, certain sports stars endorsing certain political people. It doesn't make sense. And the only reason that they say it doesn't mix is when it contradicts the message they want to put out there. And of course, the No campaign is playing dirty. So any chance that they get, they're going to do exactly that. The next one I want to talk about is Dean Andrews and housing. Now, this come up as quite a discussion. Dean Andrews has been talking about correcting the record on these philosophical statements that come from the media. And they're not necessarily asking him a question. They're more like parroting out the same old diatribe of how do we attack you for something that you haven't even done. And that's basically how all of his press conferences are seen. So in looking at this, I thought, you know what? Dean Andrews gets accused of a lot of things. Apparently, he's being accused of discriminating against older Australians. Yeah, I know, crazy, right? That they would honestly think that this is a thing. But they do. So listen to this, because Rupert Murdoch has to have a storyline in his own. He has to be the victor of his own storyline and make Dean Andrews a villain. So let's have a look at how Dean Andrews responded to Rupert Murdoch trying to champion for the older Australians.
Both safety groups have raised concerns about your print advertising ban and said there is no question that print campaigns play a key role in changing driver behaviour.
No, I don't accept that. I went to that yesterday and I've got nothing to add beyond what I said yesterday.
The Council of the Ageing said 42% of people over 75 could be deemed digitally excluded and rely on the daily newspaper. They say this ban is effectively discriminating against older people.
Well, with respect to that group, I don't accept that analysis. I think that seniors across Victoria are perfectly capable of turning the television on or turning the radio on. And I think it's just factually wrong to suggest that they aren't confident using those mediums. What's more, in my experience, senior Victorians avail themselves of technology in lots of different ways. That's changing, that's evolving. But if you're putting it to me that senior Victorians don't know how to turn the television on, well, that's a digital medium. So again, we went to this yesterday. I'm not really interested in reviewing this again or going over it again. The government's made a decision and that decision will not be changing. We are making our investments on behalf of Victorians where the audience is.
Okay, so it wasn't just this particular time. I did not hear a question actually for him to do with the policies that he has going, which I find really bizarre in the media. So now he's to blame because older Australians and technology. It's so weird. I would hate to be at Dan Andrews' press conference and never get a question about the actual thing that you're doing. It's super duper bizarre. I don't know how he handles it. But then there's this one. He's asked about federal politics. Again, not a state issue, a federal question for Dan Andrews. It's amazing to watch how stupid some of this stuff is.
Does this announcement throw a spanner in the works for those plans?
No, it's fantastic. This federal government, the Albanese federal government, is doing more than the previous federal Liberal national government ever dreamed of doing. Now it's even more again on top of the work we're doing now. So we've got a big build going on at the moment, big housing build, 12,000 units, more than $5 billion. It's the biggest in the nation. It just got bigger because we've got a partner in Canberra, something we have called for. And we don't want more than we're entitled to. We just want a fair share. And finally, we've got a Prime Minister who knows where Victoria is. And that's just fantastic news.
Your first state conference in 3 years, is it good to do that?
Fantastic. Where would you rather be? Beautiful, balmy Melbourne day like this? It's great. Fantastic.
I think there's about 8 different housing-related motions that are going to be debated today. Have you got your eye on them? One of them's on inclusionary zoning.
Well, the good thing here is that there's no longer a debate about whether the national government of our country should have a housing agenda. That's not a debatable point. That's now a fact. Because you've got a federal Labor government, the Albanese government, that knows that housing's important, knows that partnership's important, work with us, not against us. Let's get some things done. Let's get some houses built. This funding today, this is a fantastic announcement. And I want to say thank you on behalf of all Victorians. Tradies who'll build these houses, people who'll be tenants, all of us benefit from this. Thank you, PM. This is a fantastic day.
It's weird that they don't ask him, hey, how, what's going on in Victoria kind of thing. Like, they were there to talk the housing policy. But Dean Andrews wasn't asked one thing about his own state, like one thing to do that whole press conference was, well, what's your thoughts on Anthony Albanese and everything else? There's never a direct correlation between what exactly is going on and their questioning. Like, it's another weird thing that they think federally he needs to answer questions for Anthony Albanese. Like asking Anthony Albanese what he is doing. It's just bizarre. Okay, so ALBO then took to the stage and he was like talking housing as well, which I found really, really good. This is a great piece that I found, which you can't say the guy isn't funny. Particularly when you hear how great he does this. He knows his worth on all of this stuff. And I do not assume for a single minute that this is that this is all being put out there as another like when the Liberals would do these announcements and nothing would come of it. ALBO has a deliberate plan here, and they're bills in motion that talk about things that are very close to his heart, housing. He understands all of these topics. So let's have a listen to how he addressed it.
The last decade has seen the proportion of social housing decline from 4.7% to 4.2% of households. We had a federal government that didn't bother to have a housing minister for most of that time and never spoke about social housing. There's an interjection from a rowdy bloke at the front, said maybe it was a secret one. Perhaps that was the case. The last decade has seen the proportion of...
That shows us that he's not he's not going to stuff around anymore with the whole what the opposition's take is. They're just going to say no, the LNP. They're not going to agree to anything decent because that's not who they fundamentally are. If they were decent people, they have not displayed any courage of that sort of any kind. Okay, Lydia Thorpe. She again has made amazing headlines. So Lydia Thorpe discusses some very poignant, very good topics. It doesn't matter whether I agree with everything she says. You don't have to. Hell, there are people on all sides of politics that I've agreed with and disagreed with at all moments. So do not take this as me just openly handing, Lydia Thorpe the mic as in some sort of magical moment, because it's not. I'm not a fan of stunts, but this one seems to be quite good, and I really think that it really put things into perspective as to where we were in talking conservatives, because they do this thing where everything's a game, nothing's real, and we should just deal with the stupid games they play in relation to how they did policy. And there's no doubt in my mind that that's how they did things, It was all off the cuff, no real plan, no real part of it. That wasn't. Lydia Thorpe told Pauline Hanson to fuck off on the floor, on the Senate floor, after her bombshell speech declaring that Parliament is not a safe place for women. Now, after the Brittany Higgins saga, I'm inclined to agree. They had a moment to be real. A woman was harmed and relived that experience. For it, she was called a lying cow, intimidated in a witness box by Linda Reynolds. She had the steam cleaners come in. Nobody came in to take a police report from her. Everything from head to toe looks dodgy. Now it turns out Bruce Lehman has 3 other victims. So for Lydia to finally tell Pauline Hanson to fuck off and be done with it, I'm not shocked, and I don't think you should be either. It's time that we stop pretending like these words aren't used. We live in 2023, so to tell someone to fuck off is not the worst thing in the world. Quite honestly, I think a lot more people should have said it to Pauline Hanson, particularly when she creates so many anti-policies. She doesn't create anything positive. But take a look at what she tried to do with the family court and succeeded. She convinced the Liberals in a deal that certain courts should be merged into the family court. So children of abused loved ones would have to commingle into the family court. The things that she does is just horrendous. Her immigration policies are horrible. I cannot think of anything positive that she honestly adds to anyone's lives. So to tell her to fuck off isn't a shock. In fact, I applaud Lydia Thorpe for having the tenacity to tell her to her face, no, that's it, you're done. But I think that there's a more telling nature to this. Women just aren't safe. Politics has not been safe for women since it began. They've created laws around women not being able to own property, to not being able to vote, to this very level of not being safe as a staffer. Now, my bet is that there's going to be a lot of men saying, wow, they knew what they were getting into, which is exactly why that's a particularly unsafe attitude. That you're going to have lesser, particularly in conservative circles. This is why ALP have the quota system, because a lot of the boys have their own boys club. And they don't particularly like being told that their misogynistic values are coming into play in a lot of what they're doing. Lydia is right. It's not conducive for women. And until they change the culture of the prayer room, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, look up Friendly Geordie's prayer room. That'll tell you everything you need to know about how disgusting the whole thing is. Or read up on Barnaby's story. Hell, he can't even be faithful to, dear God, he flaunted that so publicly against his wife. He didn't even have the tenacity to be discreet. But even worse, he wanted his wife to keep playing along like this was all normal, before the winter ball, even though he had another woman pregnant. And now they're trying to put Vicky Campion is put out there as like people just do this kind of thing. They really don't. They really don't sleep with creepy old guys that shouldn't be the leader of New England. They really don't. Vicky, that's a sign of desperation and it's gross. But good luck to him. Okay, so I agree with Lydia. So now we're going to talk about Bruce Lehman. Turns out the guy is very popular with ASIO and AFP. Bruce Lehman is an AFP and ASIO asset in his own comments. See how close he was to both the AFP and ASIO. This is the true reason the AFP as well as the ASIO have been covering it up for him. Perhaps the greatest scandal in political history. Do you know that they were part of the information warfare online? So the very group that coveted him were information warfare people. The same people who created legislation that they could add or redact anything to make someone look guilty. Look it up, it's all there. It's all part of that cybersecurity bill, where nothing was really secure, and they wedged Labor into agreeing to it for another thing, which is how the Conservatives got all of that grotesque stuff in. It needs to be taken away. It's anti-national security. It is the most anti-national security bill that ever existed. But it turns out he's very, very heavily tied with them. But it's not just him that I have an issue with. Now we have a whole issue with David Van. In November 2020, Senator Van inappropriately touched someone at an informal social gathering. And here's the thing. The Liberals need to start dealing with some of these allegations that are coming forward. It's not great. It doesn't look good. And I don't think there's any room for this kind of garbage to continue. Okay, so next up. Harold's son is trying to make kings. Turns out that they don't believe in democracy and what the real opinion polls are. And they just believe Dutton should lead. In an insane moment where they're like, yeah, I'm not totally convinced of ALBO. They never were. So now they're just outwardly reaching their hand out to go, well, give Dutton a go. As if they get a choice, democracy be damned. They are utterly repugnant as a newspaper. I mean, really, have they seen, his polling is astoundingly bad, but sure. Okay, and here is our last story. Turns out Friendly Jordies has done a great insight into public housing. And in that story, he debunks the Greens' talk on housing, on why it's foolish for anyone to be going along with the Greens' rhetoric on it. Take a listen.
The Greens are kicking up a stink that Labor aren't just making one-off investments in housing. Oh, wait, sorry. Labor are doing that. As Petty Wong noted in the Senate, the bill the Greens are blocking also includes $2 billion in financing support for social and affordable rental homes, $350 million to build a further 10,000 affordable homes through the Housing Accord, allowing the National Housing and Infrastructure Facility to invest in social and affordable housing, opening up a potential $575 million in funding, a 15% increase in Commonwealth rent assistance, the largest increase in over 30 years. The fund is a bit like a sovereign wealth fund. $10 billion is invested, then the returns of the fund are spent on building social and affordable housing. It's set to build 30,000 homes over the next 5 years. For their first 7 years in office, the coalition were building less than 1,100 new dwellings a year. Labor's new fund could build up to 6,000 new dwellings a year. That is a massive increase. The fund is pretty clever because it's designed to ingrain an ongoing source of funding for social housing that sustains itself even when the Liberals are in office, as it's operating independently of the budget, meaning that if the fund passes, it's designed to become a sustained source of housing funding that the Liberals will have little or no incentive to destroy. Look at this graph. That is exactly why the fund is needed. And this is also exactly why it's insanely dishonest for the Greens to even mildly equate Labor with the Liberals. The problem with affordable housing in this country is that it's pretty much only built when Labor's in office. So Labor's fixing that. Funnily, this is the Greens' main gripe with the fund, that it's a fund, that it takes advantage of the reality that Australia is a Western country with a market economy. The other thing the Greens like to say is, you don't know if it'll build houses because what if the fund loses money because the existing future fund went down 1.2% last year? Yeah, well, for one, they're using an outlier year to make that argument. Since its inception, the future fund's annualized return is 7.6%. And the year before the 1.2% decline, the future fund went up 22%. You can have a look at every year's return right here. It's pretty clear how much of a lie this line the Greens peddle is of. We don't even know if houses will be built, because what if the fund loses money? The West's entire foreign, monetary and social policy is designed to ensure that over the long term, number go up. And Labor are taking advantage of this to ensure a continued source of funding for housing victims of domestic violence. But yes, some years, number go down. That's why the fund is not the only part of Labor's housing bill, but it's also why it's good, because most years there's a party in power that gives nothing to build social housing. Who really thinks this is a good tactic? Demanding of Labor, break your promises, otherwise we will block the measures you actually have a mandate for that will address the housing crisis. Measures, mind you, that aren't a cap. They've said it a million times. Measures that are just the beginning. So in essence, it's the Greens voting against Labor's bill because why? They're annoyed that they don't get to administer the solution? Do I think Labor should do more to address the housing crisis? Yes. The unions, Jackie Lambie and other crossbenchers also think that, but they're not blocking what's proposed and misrepresenting Labor's proposals to further their careers.
And that tells you everything that you need to know about why this is so fundamental. Friendly Jordies outlines that perfectly. And I think in saying that, it's helpful to understand that he comes from a place of wanting to do the right thing in making sure that everyone gets the right information, even down to the percentages of which one was the outlier that the Greens are using to perpetuate this myth that maybe the fund isn't the way to go. And it's a bit of a bizarre situation that we're caught in, because the Greens seem to enamor people with their weird rhetoric of, well, why don't you just do more? Yes, that's a wonderful fairyland fucking dream that you have. That's all it is a pipe dream. It is not built in any budgetary reality. Let's face it, we are, by nature, stupid enough to keep a conservative government for 9 years. We were. Because we had this weird belief that they were great with money. So let's not hand the Conservatives another run at it by allowing the Greens to take the rhetoric on the mandate that Labor actually has. I can't believe that we're even debating this, like the Greens are some, good faith actors in all of this. No, this is another stunt. And it doesn't get better. It only stays where it is now. If the Greens don't agree to this, believe you me, this crisis is going to get worse. This doesn't just fix itself. This market doesn't correct itself. Government needs to have a role in this for this to get better. And that is the fundamental fact. We aren't sitting in its own ecosystem. We have to create one for it to get better. The private market is not the be-all and end-all solution to fix things. And the Reserve Bank Governor Board member, Philip Lowe, is only using the blunt instrument of increasing the interest rates to do so. It's just a blunt force instrument. He's not actually interested in fixing the issue. He's not interested in taxing the corporations or anything like that, as he should. No. He's interested in just raising up interest rates and then goes, hey, I did my job. It's despicable. Anyway, a bit of a shorter night tonight because not too much happened this week, and I wanted you to know that I'm still kicking and that I will continue to bring you great coverage of these election cycles and politics in general. I want to thank you for being part of it all. Make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. See you on the next one. I want to thank everyone that was able to come live and those people who will rewatch it later. Bye.